This upper area on a workbench is super important to its overall functionality in my opinion, because it's, well, often overlooked, actually a really valuable space. And that's even more true when you're looking at 3D printing. And of course you've got filament, which you need to be able to feed to your printers. So today we're going to be taking a look at this space and what we can do with it with the Vector 3D workbench. Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to be taking a look at this upper shelf area on the workbench, and there's a lot more we can do with this space. So let me show you kind of how we adapt and evolve this very basic shelf design to do even more while adding very little in terms of cost. First off, I want to show you how the shelf is assembled. There's basically 4 extrusions, 2 long and 2 short. Of course the long ones sit at the front and back, and the short ones at the 2 sides. You've then got a number of brackets around the back or underside, which can attach into the kind of actual shelf itself. Because of the way that there's no special fixings and it's just fitted to the extrusion, you can actually mount this shelf pretty much anywhere you like. You could put it even higher up, you could put it further down, you could put it under the main workbench, you could even put it at the front of the workbench if you wanted. As long as it fits that standard width and you've got vertical extrusion at either end, then you can attach it. So it's very versatile in terms of where you put it. Of course, you could actually put multiples here as well, if that's what you wanted to do. I think there's actually a bit too much material here, more than we need, and that of course increases the price. So to make sure we can keep the price as low as possible, there are some adjustments we can make. Firstly, we've got these 2 long extrusions all the way across. These are quite expensive and because of their size generally. So we can actually half that because most of the support for the shelf is going into these extrusions at the end. So instead we can just remove the one at the back, move the one at the front about halfway back, and that leaves us with 1 less extrusion and a shelf that's pretty much just as strong as it was before. Another thing that I noticed is that these extrusion ends that point forwards actually don't look that great and could probably do with some end caps. Perhaps they could be something that's just very simply printed, or they're actually available very cheap. So I think some end caps on the ends would make it just look a little bit more polished and finished. One thing you might have noticed, and I thought seemed strange, is that we've still got this one extrusion right at the top at the back. That's part of the main kind of base frame and is actually used in other parts of the design, but I wanted to keep it there kind of for overall structural rigidity. But when you've got the shelf there, it can be a little in the way depending on what you're trying to do. Now, if you've got like filament boxes on the top, it actually makes for a nice stop so you don't push it all the way off the back. But for many things, I mean, if you've got it up against the wall, then that's not going to really make a big difference. So potentially what we can do is actually provide none of these long extrusions with the shelf, and instead you just move this one under the shelf. So you've still got most of your kind of side-to-side rigidity because you've still got that extrusion there, and we don't have to supply these extra ones with it. The downside of that is if you do choose to place this shelf somewhere else, like maybe much lower or underneath or something strange, then that's going to be a bit of a disadvantage because you're going to have to take that extrusion from the top. One cool thing I actually found after assembling this for the first time is that the width is just about right for a 3D printer. Not your obviously 300 by 400 or whatever extra large ones, but standard sizes like the Ender 3 for example, can actually barely fit up here. So for the final design, I'm going to make that shelf a little bit deeper so you can put small printers right up the top here. Another thing that I'd like to be able to fit on this shelf is a dehumidifier like this. Now this is about the same depth as a normal printer, so again it doesn't quite fit. If we kind of put it up here, move everything out the way, in its current state it doesn't quite fit. The feet don't quite sit on, but there's also quite a lot of space at the back, again because of this top beam that's sort of in the way a little bit. We could push that back if that beam wasn't there. So that's another way we can find a little bit more space, and that might help with the 3D printer upper shelf situation as well. One more thing you can do with this upper shelf is if you were to not have it as a shelf and adjust the distances between these extrusions, you could actually fit the spool holder which I'm using in the enclosure. Obviously we've not taken a look at the enclosure yet, that'll be coming up in the next episode, but we have a very simple spool holder that's used in that, which can kind of slide up and down the rails, allowing you to kind of move your filament around very easily. And of course, with very minor adjustment here, you could do exactly the same thing and have a stack of like 15 or something spools that just go all the way across. The benefit of doing that over just having spool holders on the shelf is that A, you wouldn't need a shelf, and B, you've got these that you can then upgrade the whole thing into the enclosure down the line, instead of replacing all the old spool holders that you have with new ones. This shelf is also great in its current position. I think that's a really good height, and it allows you to mount lighting to this underside here, which gives you some nice extra lighting straight onto your workbench to make it easier to do the tinkering or whatever modifications and upgrades to your printers or electronics or whatever you want to do. So that's it from me today. Just a quick one on the upper shelf, how you can use it as general storage, maybe a place to put your smaller 3D printers, a really long spool holder, or in some other location to do some other job entirely that I've not even thought of. Thank you to everyone who left feedback in the last episode. Of course, please continue to do so here. If you have any thoughts on how this should work, maybe some changes that you think would be really good, please, by all means, leave them in the comments or in the feedback link in the description. Thank you very much for watching. We'll look at the enclosure in the next episode, I think. So I'll see you in the next one.